I like either having full control or no control. And for me personally, I don't like the idea of managing with other people. So the two partners not only need to be in lockstep on what the vision is, they need to be in lockstep on their personal finances, how much money they're taking out of the business. There's a lot of other pieces there, and you need crystal clarity on who's running what in the operation. There's nothing that used to piss me off more than someone that I'm running and trying to get a vision off the ground, and that person's going to someone else for an answer, and someone else is giving them different information. There's nothing that deflates an organization more than that sort of behavior. The other thing I would say on partnerships is
today, got a very special guest. Got Pat Flynn, the owner of Flight Builders. Pat, thanks for jumping on, man.
Absolutely, Jake. Not a problem.
Long time coming. I know we had some technical difficulties on the platform last time a few weeks ago, so glad we were able to get this rescheduled and everything seems to be smooth sailing today.
No, it's no problem. I mean, it's this platform's awesome. I haven't seen it before, and we're on complete opposite sides of the country. So it's cool we're able to do this.
Totally. Yeah, I think we're both fortunate, Pat, to be in places where it's warm and sunny. How's the weather been out in Jacksonville recently?
You know, it's been chilly for a couple weeks, but it's so hit or miss. Like the past week has been just beautiful spring, and it's been awesome. Like the sun's back out, it's getting warmer. So North Florida is just beautiful this time of year.
Yeah, I love that. As you know, I own some properties nearby in St. Augustine, and I know it can get a little chilly in December, January, and February because everyone's always requesting that pool heat. But I think chilly for Florida or for Jacksonville is a lot different than where you and I are from in New England. There's two different stories.
Very different.
Yeah, Pat, once again, appreciate you coming on. And I guess to that point, maybe if you can kick things off. I know you and I both are from the New England area. Would love, fast forward to today. I know you're focused on building houses, but let's rewind a little bit. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you were up to before that. Like, tell us a little bit about, what you were up to going back to your days in New England.
Yeah, so I'm from a kind of small town in Western Massachusetts, small rural town. It's an area called the Berkshires in a little town called Lanesboro. And I had always, even from kind of a young age, have always, you've heard the story a million times of like, the young kids selling donuts in their class or like doing that kind of those little things of like interested in money and interested in like how to make money and how that whole thing works. And like, hey, my parents make salaries. Like, how much is that salary? Is that a lot? How's that compared to? So I was always like asking weird questions like that. Like I know a lot of, people in our space do. So I always had that itch, but my old man was a Marine. He was in the Marine Corps. So I was planning on being a Marine too. So I ended up going to a military school in military college in Kings Point, New York, called Kings Point U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, and kind of indoctrinated into military lifestyle there. So like the entrepreneurial side of everything's kind of took a break to that new lifestyle for a while. But if you've ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki was also a Kings Pointer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he went to Kings Point Merchant Marine Academy. He was a helicopter pilot over in Vietnam. So he played rugby too, which I also did. I played rugby at Kings Point. So that Kings Point like rugby alumni community is really tight. And Robert Kiyosaki comes to Kings Point every once in a while and just speaks because it's his alma mater. So it just so happened that he came and spoke when I was, going into my senior year. And he spoke just very high level for maybe a half hour, just like planted the seed, right? Like, tell the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had a rich dad that, was a business owner, all this. And I had the poor dad who was big into education and got all these degrees. And that was like another big jumping off point for me to start reading everything I could about that stuff. So graduated Kings Point, and just like everyone else, I didn't end up going to Marine Corps, but I went and worked on ships as a merchant marine and sailed. But because of that, I had a lot of time off. I'd work on the ship. And then when I was home. So I graduated school in 2009, so during the Great Recession, and bought my first piece of land in 2010. Fortunately, had a pretty good run, but that's kind of how my story begins right there.
That's awesome, Pat. And was that a raw piece of land was your first purchase, or was it a property, or what was that first purchase?
Yeah, it was a raw piece of land on a lake called Pontusic Lake in the town where I'm from, and it was a beautiful, piece of land, and it was a short sale. So my very first real estate deal was a short sale, like trying to figure out that process. I was on a ship for a lot of it because the short sale took like 8 months. So me and my dad kind of worked through it together, and he had never done anything like it before. And I was the one purchasing it, but he helped me with like some of the stuff at home because short sales back then it was mayhem. So I ended up buying it for like $60,000, which is really cheap for lakefront in that area, just because, the owner was underwater.
Nice. I love that. Did you end up flipping that piece of land? Did you build on it? What ended up coming of that?
So I did a couple other flips and little things up in Massachusetts while I still lived up there and was working. But when I moved to Florida, I sold everything except for that one piece of land. So, and I always kept it because like in the back of my mind, I maybe moved back there. But when I moved to Florida in 2013, started some real estate things down there. And then in 2016 kind of really started, I quit the oil field and offshore drilling and started on my own and wanted to kind of put some of my capital together. So I ended up selling that in 2016 for, I think like 350 grand or
Wow. That's crazy. And you got it for 60?
Yeah. And once again, that is not a testament to me knowing what the hell I was doing at all or being good at real estate. As the first one, I just happened to graduate college in 2009 and bought a piece of land at the bottom and
Totally.
sold it at a time where it was worth more. I mean, that was just pure dumb timing there. But
For
yes.
sure. I guess that goes to show, right, that real estate is so forgiving, and it's important to buy, almost dollar cost average in, and, buy at all times in the market cycles. And even if you buy a bad deal, I don't know if you hear this, Pat, don't be reckless, but real estate is one of the most forgiving asset classes. If you don't buy the strongest deal, if you wait long enough, pretty much every deal is going to work out over time. So yeah, that's awesome. 60 grand to 300, whether it's luck or not, for a piece of land is a huge win. I'll take that all day.
It was a long time too, and I've heard it said kind of what you said in other ways, Jake, where real estate will always correct itself as long as you put yourself in a situation where you don't have to sell, right? And having to sell comes from it can come from a place of greed, in my opinion, getting too big too quick, leveraging up too fast. So if you keep that in mind, exactly what you said is right. Like, it will correct itself if you can weather the storm, and whether it's negative cash flow for a time period or whatever it is, if you can hang on to it, you're not going to get crushed. It's the people that over leverage and go too hard and take huge land positions without any sort of risk management that can really put you in a bad spot.
Totally. Yeah, that's a great point. And thanks for clarifying there. Don't want anyone to go out and recklessly start buying deals. And obviously you want to try to make the deal pencil. It's stupid not to, but it is one of the more forgiving asset classes, to your point, if you wait long enough. So let's fast forward. So you moved from New England to Florida, you mentioned in 2013. What prompted that move? And then take us through kind of the evolution of how you got into the real estate game in Florida.
Yeah, so I was pretty deep in it in Massachusetts as well, but the plan to move out of Massachusetts was honestly because I was in my mid 20s then. Was not as emotionally intelligent as I feel like I have become over these years. I was a little wild, a little reckless. There's, in those small New England towns, sometimes, there's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of drugs involved, not a lot of opportunity. It happens all over the Northeast. And I know all over the country too, but it really was that like small town where it's like a great place to grow up, but not a great place to be in your 20s. And I just needed a change. I needed an environment change. And I told you I went to military school, and one of my best buddies was active duty Coast Guard and just rented a house in Jacksonville Beach, Florida in 2013 when I moved. So I was renting a house in Massachusetts for like $1,200 a month. I moved down to Florida, rented a room in that house, and it was $400 a month. And I was a block from the ocean, and I had a balcony that overlooked the ocean. So this
Oh my God, I love that.
2013. And that's not the case anymore, but it was $400 a month then. And when I got to Florida, I was still, working on offshore drilling rigs then. But when I was home, I was at all the local Jackson networking events, and I was sending marketing out, and I just jumped right into that real estate investing community in Jacksonville, which Jacksonville's got an awesome events, awesome community of wholesalers, flippers, builders. It's a cool thing to be a part of. And people have come from other cities and seen how tight we are in Jacksonville, and they're shocked, like, because in a lot of other markets, it's a lot more cutthroat. But fortunate to be in Jacksonville, which is a great market, and around some really good people.
That's really cool. It seems like, I mean, reflecting back, probably a huge point in your life. I mean, just removing yourself from that situation where, because I know some towns in Massachusetts and have lost some friends to, drugs and alcohol,
Sure.
and seen people go down some dark paths. So that's really cool that you kind of recognize, like, hey, this is not a spot I want to be. Let me change up my environment. Not to mention save some really good money at that point, going from 1,200 to 400, and live in a block from the ocean. So it seems like all around that, then you start investing in your time, networking, building out, the real estate stuff. And yeah, man, that seems like a really big jumping off point and turning point in the trajectory of things.
It was a fantastic move for me. I haven't looked back since then. I enjoy visiting Massachusetts. My parents, a lot of my family's still up there, but Florida's very much home now, and it doesn't hurt. The tax situation doesn't hurt either. It's just
Totally
for business.
Totally, yeah. I couldn't agree more. I still have family in Massachusetts as well, and it's nice to pop over there and visit. But man, spending a couple days there over winter time, I am very happy to get back to the warmth after that.
It's not even the cold, it's the gray.
Yeah.
It's like, why is it gray, 3/4 of the year? And once again, I'm not shitting. I can shit on Massachusetts because I'm from there, right? But it's nothing more beautiful than Massachusetts in the fall. But man, the rest of the year, just the gray.
It's brutal. It's brutal. Even the summers, man. Like, everyone's looking forward to summer, but the summers are humid as hell. Like, you're never guaranteed a nice season, but I will say I agree. Those beautiful fall days, you can't beat them.
No.
I know just from, knowing you, Pat, that Yellowbird, I want to kind of fast forward to Yellowbird. So You moved out to Jacksonville. Talk to us about how you got to Yellowbird, what Yellowbird was, and kind of the evolution of that.
Yeah. So 2013 to 2016, I lived in Jacksonville and did real estate on the side and was doing my own deals. And I had acquired a couple rentals, going to the networking events. But I was still working full time. So actually in 2016, I was on a rig, a drilling rig in Australia. And we were in a hotel and we were going back and forth to the rig. It was in a shipyard. And my girlfriend at the time FaceTimed me and was like, "Hey, guess what? I'm pregnant."
Oh, wow.
Not planned at all. We were living together, and she had moved down from Pennsylvania to be with me in Florida. So I was like, immediately I was excited, right? Like I said, I'd always wanted kids, and it came a little early, but the timing is never going to be right. So the writing was on the wall. It was finally time for me to leave offshore, and offshore was great because I traveled a bunch, worked hard. I know very much what hard work looks like now. I've grinded on that physical labor train for a while, and being in my 20s and traveling like that, and you make great money out there, especially for your 20s. So I was able to kind of stock it away, but it was time. So in late 2016, I left and jumped into real estate full time in Jacksonville. So for 2017 into mid 2018. So my first year and a half or so, my first 18 months, a lot of stuff going on. Had to switch over to kind of being a business owner. So figuring out, how to do health insurance and how to do taxes and how to do QuickBooks and all that thing. That was that transition time period. During that first 18 months, I did a lot of deals with a local guy who was, I was 30, I was 29 at the time. So this guy was like 34, so like 5 years older than me. He lent money and he had been successful with some rentals that he bought during the downturn. So I just JV'd with him on a bunch of deals the first year. like almost everything I did, I JV'd with him. And it was just a really good, smooth partnership. We both had the same expectations. I didn't fuck with him when he was renovating houses. He didn't mess with me on the acquisition side. So it allowed me to get laser focused on acquisitions in year one because I was either wholesaling it or he was renovating it for me and we were JVing. So that's another like lesson in real estate is you make money on acquisitions. You don't make money renovating houses. That's just something you have to do sometimes. You're not going to save a bunch there, or even the way I look at it, like the design piece of it. I was looking at it as money was made on the acquisition. So I did a bunch of deals year one solely because I JV'd that, the administrative stuff and all of the construction that doesn't necessarily make you money and focused on the stuff that did make you money. So I spent 18 months like JV'd on a bunch of deals with him, did a bunch of deals. We did deals together. And then he had a partner leave in the summer of 2018. So we had worked together 18 months at this point. It just worked to where it's like, hey, let's just partner on everything. And that's when Yellowbird was born. I don't love the name. I never loved the name, but it was kind of I think we owned a house on Bluebird Street and he's like, how about Yellowbird? And I was like, oh, I fucking hate it. And he's like, well, you got anything better? And I didn't. So we rolled with that. And, Yellowbird was all of 2018 up until kind of our peak of 21, 22. And me and Kyle split this last May. But Yellowbird was a real estate investment company. And at our peak in 21, 22, we had 55 employees. We owned about 500 rentals in the rental portfolio and were buying and selling about a little over 400 houses a year. So that was always my goal, to get to that 415, 420 house a year mark, because that put us kind of top 5 in the country as far as privately owned residential home acquisitions. And it was a wild ride during that time period. Anyone that was involved in residential single family real estate after COVID in 21, 22, it was mayhem. And it was a lot of fun. And it was just really an enjoyable time. Growing Yellowbird, I learned what it took to grow a business, what it took to lead people. And it was just a really enjoyable experience that I look back on very positive.
That's awesome, Pat. And I think it's funny that, or it's important to call out the fact that you guys just kind of picked the name. I feel like that's a detail that is, you can laugh about it, but so many entrepreneurs, I feel like, spend all this time on the wrong things. Oh, what's my name? What's my logo? What
my LLC.
The LLC, the website, the design. It's like, no, let's start making some money here. Let's start doing the things that matter. And then we can go back and fix a little pretty stuff, right? So I love that you guys are just like, whatever. Yeah, Yellowbird sounds good. Let's roll. Let's start making some money, right? And that's what you guys did. So I love that you guys just got right into it, and just a testament to why the company was so successful. So I know you guys grew pretty fast and amazing. Seems like that partnership was phenomenal and allowed you guys to grow at a really fast speed. But just from some discussions we've had off to the side, I think you've mentioned that, you guys almost, did you think you grew too fast? Do you think it was, I forget your take on that, but I remember you saying something about to the effect that the growth might have been a little too fast, or there was some growing pains that came along with growing too fast. Can you just talk to us about maybe the side effects of growing at that speed?
Yeah, I don't know if it was growing too fast, just because we were taking advantage. Yellowbird was an acquisitions company, so we can get into a whole nother conversation about growing a We Buy Houses company to scale, which I'm pretty negative on. I think it's done more localized. We were taking advantage of a market opportunity where Wall Street money was pouring into residential real estate in Northeast Florida. And we grew on the acquisition side to a 15-person sales team to meet that need. And we did grow very quickly. I think looking back on it, I don't know that I would have done anything differently, because Yellowbird was a company, yes, but I look at it more as taking advantage of an opportunity at the time, and not something that was necessarily, I know this now looking back, not necessarily something that was going to be sustainable for the future. the way we were buying houses, the numbers we were buying houses at back then, the numbers we were selling them at, it just wasn't sustainable forever. So we grew to 55 people to manage that opportunity that was happening there. But I didn't properly look at risk, which is what happens in June 2022 when the Fed bumps the overnight interest rates 50 bips in one swoop, right? When that happened, the hedge fund bid was off. So all these houses that we're buying, we were still buying well. The market didn't drop off in Florida. We were still able to sell the houses, but we had so much expense creep over that time period to where we were spending 450, 500 grand a month in marketing, plus another 400 grand a month or so just in overhead and expenses. So we were burning 900 grand a month at that point. So that's one of the side effects to your question is when you're taking advantage of a market opportunity like that, be careful of expense creep and know in the back of your mind what your plan is when the music stops, because any opportunity that seems too good to be true, the music will stop. Right?
Yeah.
And it did. And part of our unwinding was the fact that me and Kyle were not on the same page with Path Forward at that point. We were very lockstep on the same page for a long time, but things got hard in June 2022 during that interest rate hike of what to do with staff. Where do we point the operation? What's the next year look like? And we had hard disagreements on Path Forward. And those disagreements kind of filtered down through the operation. People felt that we weren't on the same page. And it was a really shitty feeling for me because we had such a great culture and a good thing going at Yellowbird, and people were excited to come to work every day. And then flip the switch and the music stops. And now we don't know our path forward, or we can't agree on a path forward. So my suggestion to growing too fast is making sure you're growing sustainably, making sure when you grow that the business model and revenue sources, you're identifying the difference between just solid business and just a market opportunity, and grow sustainably rather than even if it is just taking advantage of an opportunity, throttle yourself back a little bit because you don't want to put yourself in a shitty situation when the music stops.
Totally. And it seems like the partnership was really strong for a long time and got you guys to where you got. And then obviously, I feel like a lot of partnerships things, you get to a point where, you no longer see eye to eye and it's time to part ways. But do you have any suggestions for folks who are considering a partnership? Is it something that you still think can be beneficial? Are you against partnerships? What's your take on partnerships, Pat?
Okay, so this is just great question, and this is just my take. So anyone listening, take this with a grain of salt. Everyone's different. If you read, who's that guy that invests in commercial real estate? He wrote that book. Trust me, I'm lying. He just passed away. Sam Zell. If you read Sam Zell's book, he had a fantastic partnership for his entire career, and obviously one of the most successful real estate investors of all time. So take this with a grain of salt. I like either having full control or no control. So I'm in actually a new partnership now with Flight, but I set expectations ahead of time that, hey, I need control. I don't want anybody talking to the team. I don't want anybody. I have control of bank accounts. I have control of the path forward. I have final decision on anything. Those were my non-negotiables to go to another partnership. So I guess one tip is setting expectations for who's doing what. And for me personally, I don't like the idea of managing with other people. I don't like someone, my partner is running the sales team and I'm running operations. I know people have had success with that, and it's just my personality type. I either like having full control over the operation, or like if me and you had a partnership, Jake, and you had full control, okay, that's fine. I will stay out of your way and maybe I own a smaller piece or something like that. That's the way I like to set them up. So either full control or nothing. If you're going to go into a partnership where it's like one partner runs a sales team, one runs operations, ambiguity is where hurt feelings come into place. So the two partners not only need to be in lockstep on what the vision is, they need to be in lockstep on their personal finances, how much money they're taking out of the business. Their wives need to know each other and, hopefully like each other. There's a lot of other pieces there, and you need crystal clarity on who's running what in the operation. There's nothing that used to piss me off more than someone that I'm running and trying to get a vision off the ground, and that person's going to someone else for an answer, and someone else is giving them different information. There's nothing that deflates an organization more than that sort of behavior. So the other thing I would say on partnerships is I think it's very easy to date before you get married on stuff like this. Me and Kyle, we had a great partnership. And even during the breakup, we're still good. We dated for 18 months. We did deals together for 18 months before we formally put an operating agreement together. So, I mean, 7 years, solid partnership, working together for a long time. So I would highly suggest that too. So even if you do date though, setting clear expectations for who's doing what. And me personally, I don't know that I'll ever get into another operating partnership. Like by that, I mean, I want either full control or no control.
That totally makes sense, Pat, and so many good suggestions and points there. And while we're on that topic, I'd want to hear your take or have you talk a little bit more about the culture index and personality profile. So I know that is a huge component of how you hire employees, and also something that you recommend people do in like even their marriage or partnership, and just from, using it with you in certain situations, and some people I know who have used it. It seems spot on, and just in the stories you tell as well. Can you talk to us a little bit more about like the culture index and how you use that and your take on that?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I'll say on like culture index, predictive index, any of those personality profiles is just because you see other people and you see podcasts of people growing organizations, that is not for everybody. Right? Like there are a ton of ultra wealthy people that either invest themselves, run a very small team, and have a lot of success. In a lot of ways, my partner Kyle is more comfortable with a small team and having full control and operating himself. In which case, culture index isn't as important. Like if you're investing yourself and you're kind of a solo entrepreneur doing your own thing, acquiring assets, having third parties manage them, and you're not building a team or an operation, it's maybe not as important. And it's not wrong. You have to, what we preach at Flight is authenticity, right? Like, who are you? There's not a right or wrong with that. So that's one thing I'd say first. Me, I really enjoy leadership. I enjoy growing a team. I enjoy running people. I enjoy watching people grow within the organization. So because I get so much joy out of that, that's why I wanted to build a team in a company. And if you're going to build and lead a team in a company, I think culture index, in culture index is just one. That's who we use, but there's predictive index, there's DISC, there's a bunch of them. I don't know that one's better than the other. They're just different. So, but either way, doing a personality profile like that is, in my opinion, a non-negotiable. If you are going to build an organization of more than 5 people, you have to do it, in my opinion. And what you're doing is, once again, you do a culture index and get someone's profile, and their profile is not right or wrong, right? But Jake, you've met my executive assistant, chief of staff, Sarah, right? Sarah is one of the most phenomenal problem solvers I've ever met in my life. And being able to hand her something and just go, she's the glue that keeps everything together on here. But I love Sarah. If I were to put Sarah into a sales role where she's going out in the streets and knocking on doors and dealing with the hood of Jacksonville and getting told to fuck off on the phone 20 times a day, Sarah is not going to thrive in that environment, right? So she's a huge part of our organization. But if I didn't know what her personality profile was and I tried to put her in a sales role, it would be a massive failure. The same thing for my, go ahead, Jake.
Are you telling me that you're able to look at her profile? Like if you didn't even know Sarah, you'd be able to look at her profile and be like, I know she's most likely not a salesperson.
Not most likely. She is not a salesperson.
Wow.
And her profile is almost the opposite of, I have 2 killers, Mercedes and Cooper, that are the aggressive salespeople. Cooper can be told to fuck off 50 times in a day and get up and ask for more, right? And he is that hustler that's just going to go, 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 go. If I put Cooper in a spot where he was at flight in an administrative role or superintending houses where detail is important, making sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's is important, making sure everything flows correctly, he would not do well. He may do well for a little bit, but ultimately he wouldn't be happy. Right. So the magic of building an organization is putting people in roles where they thrive and they're happy and they get to utilize their personal strengths every day. And that's your job as a leader, is putting people in a role where they can thrive and feel good. And, you just feel different when you're operating in your strength zone. Right. Like, I'm not a detail oriented guy. If I had to read, I physically cannot read contracts. Let me put it that way. I can't do it. I don't care how important the contract is. I just physically, if I had a contract that was, $100 million deal, I physically could not read it. It's just not who I am. But Sarah is super comfortable reading that. She gets her strength from reading that. The same with my attorney. He's so good at doing that stuff and he feels good doing it. So putting people in those roles where they excel is, and knowing where those areas are they excel is it's critical. It's a non-negotiable if you're going to build an organization, because you don't know from talking to someone.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's what I was going to say next. I feel like where it's so powerful is when you're making that hiring decision in an interview. It's pretty easy for some people to fake it and come off a certain way and say, "Oh yeah, I'm super organized and this, that, and the
Yeah.
other." And they take the personality profile and you're like, this person is definitely not organized. They are not going to be a good fit for this role. And you can really dodge a major bullet, it sounds like,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. And I've had people come in, anyone can act like anyone for a half hour interview, right? And I've had girls and guys come in that I really like. And if I did not have this tool, maybe the tool's not 100%, right? The guys that own it would tell you it is 100%, but I've probably missed out on people because I just say straight up no because of their profile. But I bet I get it right 85-90% of the time. And I bet I've made a lot more good decisions than I made bad because of this. But we won't hire people we like because we don't think they're a fit for the role.
That is wild. Definitely a really powerful tool. So I guess to go back a little bit, Yellowbird to where you are today, which is Flight Builders. Talk to us a little bit about that transition, because I think it would be really, really powerful for everyone to hear about kind of the reflection you did, focusing on your life force and just taking some time to figure out what you wanted to do next.
Yeah, so June 2022, Fed bumped interest rates, hedge fund offers went away. We scrambled for the rest of the year. We weren't losing money on individual houses. They were still making money, but with our overhead creep, we took some losses towards the end of the year and we very much needed a path forward. And the end of 2022 was ownership disagreements on path forward. We kind of got on the same page at the end of the year. Unfortunately, at the beginning of 2023, we had to do a layoff. It was a painful thing to do, but could not get on the same page with path forward. So it was the best thing for everyone at the time. So we had our core team that was left, and ownership still couldn't necessarily disagree on path forward. So we decided to just start taking Wednesdays off to figure it out. So the whole office was closed on Wednesdays, but during that time period, I put that weight on my shoulders to kind of figure out what our path forward was. So I actually started working more. I still worked on Wednesdays. I worked Saturdays, Sundays, because I had this theory that we had such a great culture and great team at Yellowbird, already indoctrinated into traction, that the business didn't matter. The business didn't matter. All that matters is the people and culture and the operation. I had the belief that we would be successful at anything. So I don't have a fucking passion for flipping houses. I don't have a fucking passion for building houses. My passion is for my team and watching people grow and watching an organization grow and building something. So that being said, the business doesn't really matter. I was just looking for an opportunity, something systematic that we could take and run with. So I grinded hard to figure that out. And the harder I worked, the more 80-hour weeks I put in, I felt like the further away I was getting from my answer. I talked to so many people and went down so many roads. Business brokers were sending me shit. I looked at bail bonds companies. You've seen my list, Jake, of like
Yeah.
everything I went through at the time. So I made this spreadsheet of like 50 or so business ideas and rated them all: positives, negatives. Does it fit our culture? Does it fit who we are? And the more I put fucking spreadsheets together and tried to like rate things, the farther I got away from the answer. So I was in a spot where I was very burned out and decided I wasn't making any progress. So I decided to take a different approach. So I did start taking Wednesdays off. I started not answering my phone on weekends. I started taking 2-hour lunch breaks to just go work out and hang out. I left early a lot to go hang out with my family. So I was starting to eat different as well. I was starting to get in really good shape. I've always been like a workout person, but I was getting in even better shape, and I was spending even more time with Jane and the kids, and life just continued to get better. And then the answer became clear. It became very clear once I stopped actually working on finding the next thing and started working on the stuff I had been neglecting, which is kind of my family, not only my immediate family, but my sisters, my mother, my father, and my body, and working out and meditating. Once I started doing that more, like this blurry vision of a path forward in an uncertain market started to just become clear. It was really crazy. And then I just saw it to where, listen, I'm already in real estate. I already have all these real estate connections. I know kind of how to buy land, but I definitely know how to buy houses. And building a house is way easier than flipping a house. I say easier, it's more of a process. It's more of a widget, to where flipping a house is a lot of decision making. Every house is different, built in different years. We can build a process to build a house. And real estate experience already, and being able to add my acquisition experience and that experience of our team to be able to acquire land and then build on it through a build process and have operational leadership already in place, it was just the obvious choice. So I love the affordable housing market. I love Jacksonville, but even more so, I love the team that we have in putting together an operational project for them to do and for me to help with. And it just, since then, everything has come together so naturally, and it's just felt so right. So that was a long way of saying, if you're grinding very hard and you can't find a direction, sometimes the best thing to do is to stop completely. Stop grinding and start focusing on you, right? Start focusing on your relationships, your health, your diet. And if you do that, things just strangely start to fall into place. And every time I'm stressed out now, I still do the same thing. And the answers just become more clear.
Totally. That's so powerful. And I think when we had both watched that documentary Stutz, there was some really good nuggets in there on focusing on what he called your life force, which was, your diet, exercise, sleep, connecting with people, and just bringing it back to the basics. And to your point, once you focus on those things, if you're going through a difficult time, everything else seems to work itself out. And it's so counterintuitive, right? Because I'm the same way. It's like, let me grind harder. Let me try to figure this out myself and just put in more hours, and then it'll work itself out. And it's like, it's not really the case, because you're so tunnel visioned at that point that you can't see the forest through the trees, right? Like, you need to take a step back, kind of work on yourself, feel good, get grounded, and then everything will work itself out from there. So that's really good stuff, Pat.
Stutz is fantastic, by the way. I mean, everyone should watch that. And he's a phenomenal author too. I know we've talked about before his book, Lessons for Living, that just came out, was one of my favorites of 2023. And I've gifted it to people a lot too. But
Awesome.
He's fantastic.
I think it's really interesting what you said as well about building a team. And I've heard you say that before. It's an interesting concept, because I feel like a lot of people will focus on, hey, what am I passionate about? And it might not, maybe that's the case for some people. Maybe it's important that they're super passionate about the business they're building. But I feel like a lot of the fun is just in building a business with the right people. It doesn't necessarily matter what type of business it is.
I would agree with you, but I don't think there's a wrong answer. There's so many different ways to skin a cat in this, and people have had a lot of success, being obsessed with like one product that solves a problem for them and the team just naturally builds around them. I've just taken a different approach where I'm passionate about fitness and that sort of thing, but I'm more passionate about like the team and growing the team and then solving the problem. So I don't think either way is wrong. There's just so many different ways to do it as long as you are as long as you're being authentic to who you are, right? I think the issue comes into place if you watch Shark Tank or you scroll Instagram and you see someone building a team and you want to build a team because you want to be like that person and it's not really who you are. I think those sort of empty goals that aren't really yours, goals that aren't your own, are the dangerous piece of it. I think you're never going to go wrong if you follow who you are and where you feel comfortable.
For sure. And I know we've talked a lot about this, Pat, how, you're a big believer and I agree in being authentic to yourself, right? Not living a life for someone else and really stripping it all down. Like, who cares what anyone else thinks? Like, what do I want to do? Because if you don't do that, you're going to get to a point in 5, 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it might be, where you look back, you're like, holy shit, like I feel so empty. I just lived my entire life to please everyone else. And oh, by the way, everyone else doesn't give a fuck about
They
you.
don't.
I mean, no one cares. So
No one cares.
when you strip it all away, it's really sad. And I think it's important to come to that reality sooner rather than later, so you can live an authentic life rather than fast forward. I would say probably over 90% of people conservatively are probably doing this, right? They're living a life to please a perception that someone else, or paint a picture of themselves that society or someone else wants of them, not what they really want to be doing. And
I think you're completely right. And you mentioned that it's sad. I look at it as, this may be just me, but I look at it as freeing. Actually, the fact that nobody actually gives a fuck, right? Like, for me to try to make money to impress people I went to college with or high school with, like, nobody gives a fuck. Not your family, not anybody. So it's like, you nailed it. It's so important to do it for yourself. And just a quick story is, like, when I was flipping houses and doing stuff with Yellowbird, like, we had a great business. We were consistently flipping, at one point we were consistently flipping 40 or so houses a month. So things were running. I was very proud of what we had been doing. And there's a local developer in town that's a friend of mine. And I had heard he just made like $2 million on a development deal. And at the time, it made me feel really small, right? It made me feel small and be like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm like hustling these houses for 20 grand a house. This motherfucker just made $2 million on a development deal. Like, maybe I should be doing that. And that feeling stuck with me for a long time, that feeling of like not being enough. And it took me time to work through and realize that, why should I give a shit? Like, doing a $2 million development deal was never my goal. It was never on my goal sheet. My goal sheet was doing 30 houses a month, and I had accomplished that. And here I am feeling bad about myself because someone else is going out and doing their goals, and I never even had it as a fucking goal on my sheet. So going through this process with like flight builders and being really authentic to who I am, and Jake, me and you have gone over that financial finish line, setting up everything I want in life and making sure I'm on the trajectory to go authentically where I'm going, gives me a new feeling of power that I don't care if this wholesaler crushed it this month or if this developer is doing this deal. Like, I am laser focused on what I'm doing. You want to be a little opportunistic, of course, but now I'm not comparing myself to anyone because I know my strength is team building. My strength is acquiring this land and building the team that's going to do so, and building a home builder company that is going to be around for a long time. So I'm laser focused. So I can see you, Jake, doing the stuff you're doing in California, and I don't have that feeling of like, oh shit, like I'm jealous, like maybe I should be doing that. It's like, no, like I can celebrate your wins and I can celebrate my peers' wins because I'm being authentically me and going down my road, and your road is your own. So I feel like just as being entrepreneurial like that, that's a big issue for us, is like FOMO almost, and seeing someone else crushing it and changing your whole business model to be more like them or go down that road. But those are very empty paths. So it just rolls right back to authenticity. Authenticity just makes you a better person because you're going down your road, and now you can celebrate others when they have wins rather than be jealous of them, which plagued me for a long time, honestly. And now that feeling is gone, and it's just fantastic.
For sure, that's such good stuff, Pat. And I know you put together your vivid vision for the company as well, which I had the pleasure of reading through. And I feel like that was a huge thing that you guys did, just to get like clarity on where the company's going, who you guys are as a company, your goals. You shared it out with, your employees. It sounds like you shared it out with others. And now I mean, I have all the confidence in the world just from knowing you and also reading through that you're going to achieve those goals. It's no longer an if. The fact that you put so much work and clarity into that vivid vision, it's now just like a roadmap that you guys just have to execute on.
100%. And the cool thing about that is everyone has the power and ability to do that, right? Mine involves building a team, but I know for a fact if you are just a guy that doesn't really like being around people and wants to invest for themselves and their family's future, that you can create a different roadmap. And if you do the work to write it down and actually put it in writing and have it up somewhere, that you can accomplish whatever as well. And it's something that 99% of people don't do. They just kind of go through life and take the shots as they come rather than taking control and being intentional with exactly where you're going. But yeah, I appreciate that, Jake. And there's been extreme power in writing down that goal and sharing it with not only my team, but like everyone in the community. Everyone I meet gets a vivid vision because someone will read it. The most random person will read it and be like, hey, you should talk to this person, or you should talk to this banker, or I got this person that may be a great fit for you. The more people you share this goal and vision with, the more it just makes it a reality. Right? It's crazy.
For sure. And I feel like a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this myself sometimes, it's like when you document something like that, you feel like you need to get it perfect and, know where you're going in every avenue. And it's like, no, your things I'm sure are going to even change for you guys. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like
100%.
it's about just documenting something, like putting a lot of thought into it. I know you put a ton of work into it. So put the work in, but just from where you sit today, what are your goals today? And know that it's going to be fluid. Things are going to change, but progress over perfection, right? If you just try to perfect, your goal, whatever your vision, you're never going to take action, and then you're going to have nothing documented. So you need to
Right.
take some sort of action and then iterate off of that.
You nailed it there. I'll give credit to Don Wenner for describing it not as much as a goal, but a compass. So, Don at DLP is one of the best operators I've seen, and they reset their compass every single year, right? So they're resetting their compass every single year based on 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, where the company's going to be. And it fucking changes all the time. And that's fine as long as you have a direction. And like you said, Jay, get the first one out there and then iterate it over time. Because just like that foggy vision that gets more clear, if your first one's going to suck, right? It's going to be our first vivid vision. Like it's just version 1, right? The second one's going to be that much better because you're going to be that much clearer because you marched down a road based on the compass you set for your direction. So it really is exactly what you said. You try to get it perfect the first time and you'll just never do it because you're just going to get paralyzed by how much needs to go into it. But you get that first one out there and you get your direction going the right way. It'll continue to get better over time. So I agree with you. Great advice.
Absolutely, Pat. Well, we could chat for hours longer, but I appreciate you coming on. It's been awesome hearing about your story. From buying that first piece of land in New England all the way to the incredible business that you're building out at Flight Builders. I have the utmost confidence that you guys are going to become, one of, if not the number one builder in your area in the Jacksonville area. So I'm excited to see that journey progress.
I
and appreciate
appreciate
you
it.
coming on. If folks want to find out more about flight builders, find out more about you, where can they find out more info, Pat?
Yeah, so on Instagram at Pat Flynn STF. STF stands for Secret to Flight. Flight's named after one of my favorite books that's helped me through tough parts in my life. It's called Rebirth by Kamal Ravikant. It's fantastic. But I do an email every day, every Friday, which is like a Friday Thoughts email. You can go to my Instagram and sign up for that. And I do a podcast called The Secret to Flight weekly. And all I do with my podcast is I basically talk to myself for like 5 to 10 minutes and I just update on what's going on with flight, issues I had this week, and how I work through them. So it's kind of a cool thing because even my Friday emails and my podcast is I do them solely for myself because I feel like for my kids and just me, being able to look back 10 years from now during a time at flight where we're watching the bank account very closely and trying to, we're very much in startup mode. It'll be cool to see where my head was at that time period. So I'd urge anyone to, like, if you want to listen to mine, fantastic, but I'd urge anyone to do that on your own. It's so cool to look back and whether it's a journal or you're doing a podcast or an email and see where your head was at during certain periods in your journey.
Totally, yeah, and I've had the pleasure of listening to your podcast and getting your newsletter, and it's awesome stuff. Your insights and following along on the journey have been really cool to see. So for recommend everyone sign up for the newsletter and listen to the solo pod. Pat, thank you again for coming on, man. It was awesome hearing your story, and yeah, excited to see you crush the rest of the year at Flight Builders.
Appreciate it, Jake. Thank you.